What's up guys? In today's video I'm going to teach you and I'm going to show you how to create a crypto. Yeah, we are going to create a token and you are going to see that actually is very simple. So yeah guys, the first thing that we are going to do and that I'm going to show you is that here we have my GitHub. In the description you will have the repository in which you have all the code that I will develop related with Solidity and Ethereum, because the token is going to be in the Ethereum blockchain. So here you have the code that we are going to implement right now, and this is it. This is how you create a token, but I'm going to explain it right now. So what is the first thing that we have to do? We have to open Remix. So let me put this in my other screen so I don't make mistakes. So here you have it. This is Remix. This is an online ID. You also have it for to be offline, but I prefer to use it online because it's much more simple. So the first thing that we have to do is to open here a new workspace and give it a name. So for example, we are going to call it Kevin's token. Okay, and now we click OK. Special characters are not allowed. Okay, so I cannot put Kevin's, so let me put K token, for example, and now OK. So here we have all these files which we don't need. So we are going to select them all and delete them all. So we come here, we are also going to delete this readme.txt, and now we are ready to start creating the token. The token is basically a contract. So in order to create a contract, we need to first create a file. So we are going to call this k token.sol, and inside this file is where we are going to code everything. First of all, let's put the license. So here, SPDX license, and the license, well, here you put identifier, and the license is going to be mid. Then now we have to say to the compiler which versions do we allow to use. By the way, let me show you that here the compiler that I'm using is this one. You can use this one or whatever you want, but the one I'm using right now is this one. And I think that also with this compiler, with this version, you don't need a library called SafeMath. Like now all the operations are done like without overflow, because that library was just for that. But yeah, we don't need that. This is the compiler and so on. So here we have to say that, okay, pragma solidity, you have to use the compiler 0.8.7 or above, and this is what or above looks like. So now that we have this, we also need to put here pragma experimental AB encoder version 2. So this will be very useful for later using hashes. So for those of you who know object-oriented programming, creating a token is just simply implementing an interface. Just that. Actually, you don't really need to create the interface, but trust me, it's just that. So let's create here the interface. That's why I'm telling you that you don't really need to create that, because you just need a contract, a class, to have some methods, but here you can put that interface so that it is more clear. So we are going to call this interface IRC20, and look, we need the next functions. The first one is the total supply. So this function should return the total supply that the token has. So this function is going to be external, is going to be a view because it's not going to modify anything, and we are just going to read things, and returns a uint, an unsigned int of 256 bits. Sorry. So now the next function is the balance of. So this function is going to tell us the balance of a specific account. So you can see that here as a parameter we send the account and we have to return the balance that that account has. So this function also returns here, I forgot to put yes, it returns an unsigned int of 256 bits. Perfect. So the next thing that we have here is the allowance. And look, this is something that it got me like, what is this? So it is difficult to understand, and it is just simply imagine that I allow another person to use some of my money. So imagine that I have, I don't know, for example, this euro, and I give this euro to the other person. It's still mine. I allow him to use it, but it is still mine. So that's why allowance means, although it is still mine, I allow someone else to use it. So this function receives the owner, which is me, the euro is mine, and the spender, the person that I allow to use that euro. So what does this function return? So it returns not external, this is external view, because we are not going to do nothing else but read. And this is an unsigned int of 256. So we are going to say how much do we allow that other person. So for example, I'm allowing this person just 1 euro in our case. So perfect. Then we need another function which is called transfer, and as the name says, it is just to transfer some tokens. So here we have to say, okay, recipient, and we have to put here the amount that we want to transfer. So this function is also external, and this one is not a view because we are going to modify something, and in this case obviously we are going to modify the balance. So this function returns a boolean which will say if the transfer was successful or not. Okay, the next function is going to approve. Well, it is going to be called approve. And what this function is saying is, remember that euro example that we talked about? This approve function is the one who says like, hey, I approve this person to use this euro. So the allowance is just simply giving you information. It is telling you that, hey, me, Kevin, allow this other person to use this euro. But the approve function is telling you, hey, Kevin wants to allow that other person to use this euro. So that's what approve means. So this is an address, and this is the one who we allow the other person. So let's call this spender, and the amount we allow this person to use. So we are going to put here amount. And this function is external, and it returns a boolean because this operation can be successful or not. Perfect. Let's remove this space. Of course we have errors here, don't worry, we will check them later. And here, this is the last function. This is the function called transfer from. And okay, again with this example, remember that I have 1 euro, I allowed another person to use this euro, although it's still mine. So this function, what it's doing is that, okay, the other person is going to use this euro and send it to, I don't know, to these guys, the ones in the poster. So this transfer from, what it will do is that, okay, this other person is going to take the euro and give it to them. So in this function, we have to check that I allowed this other person to use this euro. So yeah, this is the most difficult function, but you will see that in the end, it's very simple. So this is the one who sends the euro, the other person. Then this is the one who receives the euro, and this is the amount we want to send. So here we put amount, and here we return external returns bool, because the function can be good or not, successful or a failure. Also, we have to create some events. So the events that we have to create is the first one called transfer, and this is an address. Well, here we receive first an address which is indexed, and the indexed word is just used to I think is to order the logs. Like, it's nothing crazy. So now that we have this, we are going to put here from address the person we are sending this, and finally the amount. If you are still thinking about this function, which I am, don't worry. When we implement that function, everything will be more clear. So here we are going to put here another event, which is the approval. So here, this is an event that represents a transfer, and here this is the approval that, hey, I'm allowing this person, and so on. So here we receive the address, which is indexed, and it's the owner, and then the person we allow to spend our money, the spender, and the amount that we allow. So here, let me put 256, and a value. Perfect. So now we can create the contract. So let me check what is, this is external. Yeah, perfect. So now let's take all these functions, let's copy them, and now let's create the contract. How do we create a contract? We are going to call this contract token, and now this needs to implement this interface. So here we can put is IRC20, and I forgot to tell you why IRC20, because this is like the standard for tokens. If you look for ERC20, this is the standard for creating tokens. And indeed, here you have all the functions that we created: total supply, balance of, transfer, allowance, approve, transfers from, so on. So you have also a brief explanation of what each function does, but yeah, this is what we should do. Perfect. So now that we have this, let's create the token. So we can copy now here all these functions, but before that, we are going to define some attributes to the contract, to the class. So here, first of all, we are going to create the first attribute, which is going to be a string, and it's going to be the name. Since this name is not going to change, we are going to put here constant. And let's call this token. Then the next thing that we have to do is to put here string public constant, the symbol of the token. So for example, KTKN, something like this. And then, okay, I compile, but yeah, here we have to put lots of things, so don't worry. Then we are going to put the decimals that this token is going to have. We are going to say, let's use an unsigned int of 8 bits, because we are not going to put a crazy number here. We are going to say that the number of decimals is going to be just 6. Just that. Perfect. So now we can start implementing all these functions. But since here we are going to implement something from an interface, we should put override. So we put it here, and I think that I have put this in the wrong place. Let me check. And no, it is in the right place, but of course we have to put here some code. So let's take all this, let's put it like this, perfect, and yeah, perfect. So now everything is fine. Okay, so let's start with the very simple functions. So the first one is the total supply. How do we, and I think that I forgot some things, sorry. Instead of implementing the functions, we are going to do some things before, sorry. So, what are those things that we have to do? First of all, we need a place to store the balances. So for example, yeah, Kevin has €1 that allowed that person to use and so on. We need to store all those things somewhere. So first of all, we need to store that I have €1. So where am I going to store that? I'm going to store it in a mapping. Remember that a mapping is something like a dictionary in Python, like a key value data structure. So the key is going to be the address, which is something like the wallet. And here we are going to have the amount of tokens that this address has. Balances. Perfect. Now we need that other thing that I told you. So for example, first of all, we need a mapping that has an address, and then here, maybe this confuses you, another mapping which has first an address. Let me put this like this, and then this has an unsigned int, and this is the allow. Okay, what is this? This is what I told you before. Me, Kevin, that I have €1, I allowed this other person to use it. So I can, example, let's think that I have €2. So I have this other person, okay, and now I have another person. So I need to store that me, Kevin, has two persons here, 1 and 2, that he allowed, and the first one, for example, I allowed him 50 cents, and the other one, €1 and 50 cents. Something like that. So that is the allowed. Perfect. Finally, we need to create a variable to store the total supply. The total supply. Perfect. So this total supply can be constant. It can be changing. You can do it as however you want. So here we have this variable total supply that we are going to leave it like this. We are not going to give it a value. And yeah, now we have to implement the constructor. So here we are going to say constructor unsigned int, because here in the constructor we are going to say how many tokens do we want to create. So we are going to put here that here we receive the initial supply. So once we have the initial supply, we are going to say that the total supply is going to be the initial supply. That's it. And we are going to say also that the balances have changed, and the person who who created the contract is the one that is going to have all these tokens. So here we are going to say that the sender is going to have also the total supply. That's it. Remember that we have this like structure which contains this attribute, which is actually who is the address of who is sending the request. So in this case, the request is creating the contract. So here, this is the person that creates the contract. So now that we have this is very easy. So for example, total supply, what do we have to put here? We are going to put that we are sending the total supply. But look, you could do, for example, another function to increase the total supply. That depends on you. I'm going to show you how to do it, but we are not going to use it. And here we will just put increase. You can see that this is not here in this interface because it is something like additional that you add. So here we are going to put increase total supply. And here we are going to put some things. So for example, here we are going to say that, okay, which is the amount that we want to increase. And also this function doesn't return anything. So we are just going to put here public, and let's add that. So for example, here we are going to take total supply, this variable, and we are just going to add the amount. That's it. Perfect. We are not going to use it, but you know now that you can do something like this. Perfect. So now what is the next thing that we have to do? We have to create the balance of. This function is very easy because we just have to, okay, we have an address and we have to check the balance. Remember that here we have the balances mapping. So we are just going to say balances account and that's it. We are going to the mapping and saying, okay, give me the information of this account. That's it. Now we need to set the allowance. So remember that this is the strange thing of I let you that, I give, so on. So here we are going to use the allowed, and okay, the owner, which in the example it was me, let's put here owner, in this case Kevin, allowed that other person, the spender, and here we would send an amount. That's it. So now this function is important. This is the transfer function. And what do we have to do in this transfer function? Very easy, just transferring things. Well, in this case, tokens. So how do we do this? We just simply need to modify the balances. So what we are going to do here is that balances, okay, we are going to the person that sent this request, we are going to take him, we are going to subtract this amount, perfect, and now to the recipient, well, not balance of, balances, to the person that receives something, we are not message, sorry, here is recipient, we are going to add an amount, perfect. And now we have to emit the transfer event, which we are going to state right here. And I think that we don't need, yeah, I think that it's okay. So how do we emit this transfer? We put here transfer, and what do we need to put? So first of all, the from, the message sender, the one who receives, the to, recipient, and the amount. And we have all the information, the recipient, the one who received, and the amount here. So we emit that, and remember that this function returns a Boolean value. So here we are going to put return true. Perfect. So this is telling us something, and I think that we don't need to put this here. Since it is already here, we don't need, events don't need to be state 2 times. So we can leave it like this. Perfect. Okay. So the next function is the function approve. And this is the case in which I tell another person, hey, I allow you to use my euro. So what we are going to do is that in this case, we don't need to change the balance because the euro is still mine. I still have just 1 euro. But the thing is that I allowed someone else, but the euro is still mine. So for that reason, we are not going to modify the balance. So here we are going to say, okay, allow the owner, which is me, and now I going to put here the spender, the person that I give that euro, which I allow that euro to use, and I'm going to add an amount to be added. Perfect. Something like this. Okay, but now we need to emit something, and in this case it is an approval. So we need the owner, the spender, and the value, and we have all the information here. We are going to put here approve, not approve, this is approval, sorry. We are going to put here approval, and first of all the owner, the ones who receive, the spender, not the sender, sorry, and finally the amount. That's it. Okay, and finally we have to return something, in this case true, because everything went fine. Okay, so we come to the worst function. Okay, transfer from. So that other person now is going to give that euro to someone else. So first of all, since he's giving now that euro to someone else, now I lost that euro. Me, Kevin, lost that euro. So we have to say, okay, balances, the owner, which is here and should be here. Let me check something. Sender, recipient. Yeah, I think we can change this. We are going to put here owner, and we are going to put here. Well, let's leave it like this. Let's leave it something like this. Recipient. So, okay, let me check because, yeah. Okay, the owner, which is me, Kevin, now doesn't have that amount, in this case €1. And now the person that I allowed that euro also is not allowed to use any euro because it's not there. So we can put here allowed owner, and only the person, well, message sender. In this case, the sender is not me, is that other person who is allowed to use that euro. So the sender of that transaction, of this request, is the other person. So here, this gentleman, okay, this is not allowed owner, this is amount. I have to correct this in the GitHub because this is wrong. Amount. And also here, the balances of the recipient increases. So, perfect. So remember, I lost that euro, this person used that euro, so now he's not allowed to use that euro, and now the person who we are sending that euro has €1 more. So that's this. So we have to emit something, and in this case it's a transfer, and it's between the owner and the recipient. The transfer indeed is between me and that other guy, but this person in between was just allowed to do that. So we put this, the amount, and finally we return true. And guys, I think I can tell you we have created a crypto, and this is truly cool. Well, not a crypto, a token, but a token can do a lot of things. Let's test everything, and also I'm going to teach you how to deploy it. So here I have this example. So if we come if you come here to the deploy and transaction, you choose any environment, but let's use just the first one. Don't use the MetaMask, not yet. For example, this first one, we have here these three first directions. So what I'm going to do is that first of all, I'm going to create I'm going to deploy the contract, and the person who deploys the contract has the initial supply, which is going to be 100 tokens. Then I'm going to send this other person 20 tokens. Okay. And now this second person is going to allow a third one to use that. So you can see that here is not that I have 0, indeed I have 20, but I allowed this person to use 20, which indeed doesn't have anything. It will be something like this. And what I will do here in the next step is that this allowed person is going to send this 20, which he doesn't have this 20, he's just allowed. He will send that to this other person. So let's try that. Here, we are going to choose this K token. Remember, here you have the interface or the actual token, so use the token deploy. And here we are going to put 100. Let's choose the first one, the first account, and let's deploy this. Perfect. So we have here the contract, and now let's check some things. First of all, let me check the balance of this account. So we should have 100. That's it. We have here 100. That is perfect. So now we are going to send to this other account some tokens. So we are going to send 20. Let's put here transfer. Okay, the transfer was okay. So let's check again the balance of this guy, the first one. So now you can see that it's 80, and if we come here, the balance of this other guy should be 20. Perfect. So now what we are going to do is that this other guy, the second one, is going to allow a third one to use his money. How do we do this? Let's use the function approve, and now don't forget that since we are going to do this in this second account, we have to choose that second account. We are going to come here to approve. The spender is going to be this gentleman, and let me check that everything, spender and amount, here we are going to put 20. Perfect. So we click here on approve, everything was fine, and we can check that. So the owner is this one. So we come here to allowance, and this is the owner. The spender, the one who is allowed, is this one. So if we click here, we should see 20. So this person is allowed to use 20. Everything is working fine. So now, as the third person, we are going to choose here the third one. We are going to send to the first one all the money. So what we are going to do is transfer from, and we are going to take the owner, because the owner is this one which has everything. Owner, and we also need the recipient, which is the first one. Okay, the recipient, which is the first one, and the amount, which is this one. Perfect. So we are going to also, let me check everything. Okay, if we click here, transfer from, everything seems to work fine. But we should also check here that everything is fine. So if we come here, we select this, we click. Okay, I copied that wrong. The balance is 100. This means that everything is working fine. But indeed, I forgot one very important thing, is that here we should create some modifiers. So the first modifier that we are going to create is the enough balance. The token is already finished, but here we are going to create some modifiers to check that, for example, someone has enough balance to do something, etc. So the first modifier is going to be enough balance, and we receive here first an address which we are going to call wallet, and then here an unsigned int which is going to be the amount. Okay, so remember that every modifier needs to be finished like this, and here we are going to say, okay, we require that the amount we receive is less or equal to the balance that this wallet has. If this man has not enough money in his wallet, he's not going to be able to execute any function that has this modifier. So here we are going to put a message: the wallet doesn't have enough tokens. Perfect. And now we are going to create another token, well, modifier, sorry, which is going to be enough allowance. So here, first of all, we receive the address, the wallet, then the sender, well, the spender indeed, the spender, and finally the amount here. So this is actually checking that I gave that euro to that other person, so now he's allowed to use that euro. We are checking that, is this other person really allowed to use that €1? So we are checking that. So we require that the amount is less or equal than the allowed quantity that this other person has. So is this other person allowed to use this much money? That's what this require is saying. Remember that we have to put this at the end. And let's put here a message which is going to be, you are not allowed to use this, you don't have enough allowance. Let's put it like that. You do not have enough allowance. Perfect. So this is telling us that we have an error. And here, let me check. Enough allowance here. Oh my god, this is allowed. Perfect. So we have this. And for example, where should we put this? Here, in the transfer function, we should put enough balance. So does this person have enough balance? So we are going to put here sender and the amount. Also in the approve function, we should put that like, does this person have this euro that allows that other person? And finally, in the transfer we are going to put not only enough balance, because this person needs to have enough balance, but also enough allowance. So is this person allowed to spend this money? So here, let me check that I don't put anything wrong. Here, first of all, it is the owner, then the one who is allowed, so the sender, and finally here we put the amount. So this function is very long, but yeah. So now we truly have finished. So these are the checks that we should do. Perfect. So what is the next thing that we should do? For example, we are going to deploy that in a testing net. So how do we do this? Do you remember that I told you that you shouldn't select MetaMask? Now we are going to do that. So we select MetaMask and automatically this account has been selected. Which is this account? If I open MetaMask, you can see that here I have this account. You have to check that here you are not in the main net, because you are going to spend real money if you are in the main net. Here, this is the testing net, which is the Rinkebuy. So we are going to use that one. So you click here on Rinkebuy, and you can see that if this don't appear, you are going to put here show or hide testing nets, something like that. So you choose that one, and you will see that you don't have any Rinkebuy ETH. How do you get some Rinkebuy ETH? You come here and you put faucet, and look, if you put here faucet Rinkebuy, you have lots and lots of faucets. So for example, you can select this one, which will give you instantly. So you click here. In there, I think that I can get that, but look, you just click here, finish that, send request, and you will have 0.1 ETH, which will be enough to deploy that. So here we are going to deploy that, and one very important thing, depending on how many decimals you have, you will have to put, for example, if you want to have one token, here we should put 1 million, because 1 million has 6 zeros, which are 6 decimals. So if we want 100 tokens, we should put 100 million. So here we are going to put this. Okay, this is 100, this is 100,000, and this is 100 million. Okay. So we deploy this, and you will check that MetaMask is here asking you, and look, you have to pay the fees. So that's why I'm telling you that you should use this in a testing net. So here you click on confirm, and now this will take a little bit of time, and once it is finished, you will have some tokens. So you have to wait a little bit. This shouldn't take too much. Okay, so here we have it. Now you can see that this contract is deployed at an address. So you click here on copy. You come here again to MetaMask. You come back here, and here it should say something like you are not seeing your token or something like that. You click on add one. You put here the address of the token, and here you can see that automatically this takes the symbol. So here it also took the decimals, and now you just have to put here add a personal or a custom token. So you add that, and you can see that we have 100 tokens. The ones that we created. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. You now know how to create a token, and who else is teaching you this, guys? Who else? So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed, and if so, give it a like, share, subscribe, and see you in the next one.